as I said before, when we go on to example 3, our centroid has special properties. What we know is that the centroid is going to divide each median into a 2-to-1 ratio. Okay, the larger part is always by the angle, and the smaller part is always by the midpoint. Okay, and if it's a 2-to-1 ratio, then that means that my centroid, okay, is going to have 2 segments closer to the angle, effectively, and 1 closer to the midpoint. Okay, or 2 lengths closer to the angle and 1 length closer to the midpoint. So looking at that idea, F is going to be a centroid, and each line here, BE, AG, and CD, is a median. So in this, if DF is 4 and BF is 16, and all of AG equals 30, we can answer some of these questions. So looking at DC first. Okay, this is one median. F is the centroid. Closer to the midpoint would be a length of 1, and closer to the angle would be 2 that match up. So that means that if DF is 4 long, then FC has to be twice that. It has to be 8. And that would mean that the entire length of DC, put it all together, would be 12. Okay, doing something similar with BE. If you look at all of BE, that's an entire median. Between the centroid and the angle is always the larger portion, and that's 16, and that's twice as big as between the midpoint and the centroid, which would make this FE 8. EF would be 8. And then the entire length of BE, if you put the 8 and 16 together, would be 24. Okay, and then finally, if you look at the AG, this is where things are a little different. Instead of having the individual pieces, you have the entire length of AG is 30. And then remember, what we can do with a ratio is we can make that 2x and 1x. So the smaller portion closer to the midpoint would be 1x, and the larger portion closer to the angle would be 2x. And together, those would have to add up to equal the entire median of 30. And so what we're really just doing here is dividing that median into 3 pieces. So that the smaller portion would be 10, and then the larger portion would be 20, because it's 2 times x. And so AF would be 20, and FG would be 10. Okay, using the same concepts here, we have to talk about another way that we can represent a ratio. 2 to 1 can also be written as a fraction, 2 over 1, where we're putting a larger on top and the smaller on the bottom. That's useful because in this particular problem, number 4, we can use that to make a proportion. So AH is going to be 7x minus 29, and HD is x minus 7. AH is this larger portion between the angle and the centroid. That is twice as long as HD, which is the h minus 7. So if I set this up as 2 over 1 equals, I'm putting the larger on top and the smaller on the bottom, I can represent this side as 7x minus 29 over x minus 7. And then I can cross multiply. And when you do that, don't forget to distribute. So 2 times x minus 7 becomes 2x minus 14. And 1 times 7x minus 29 is 7x minus 29. And so what we're really doing is we're taking the smaller one and doubling it, because once we double the littler one, it will equal the larger. So 2 times the small will equal the large. And so you can set this up any way you would like to get the equation 2x minus 14 equals 7x minus 29. And then we're going to solve. Subtract 2x from both sides, add 29 to both sides, and then divide by 5, and you'll get that x is 3.